everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show y'all how I'm going to set some of these little polymer clay faces that we had made in one of my previous tutorials in a couple of different ways. So let's get started. So here we have, you can see, I have 16 gauge 1/4 inch SWG, that's the standard wire gauge, anodized aluminum rings. There'll be links for all of the tools and materials used in this tutorial down in the video description below. And I'm going to take the polymer clay face that we made, which if I remember to, there might be a link, some here or here, or at least down below, to show you how to sculpt your own. But I have quite a bit woven, or not woven, but set up. So the first ring is going to be one open with two closed on it. And we're going to take this and close it. And you want a nice clean closure, as best as you can. And I have a tutorial, again, I'll be linking up on the screen, where you can see in much greater detail and much more in depth on how to weave this pattern. But you can kind of see here just a quick demonstration. You'll want to kind of line those rings up. These first couple of segments are definitely the hardest. But I'm going to go ahead and weave the length of this, and then I'll meet you all right back here whenever I get it to be the right length. So here you can see I've woven quite a bit. And this is just going to edge around the sides of the face. Now also the same technique would work if you were using just any old cabochon. And I'm going to play it by ear to see how many more pieces, how many more units of the rings that we need. So I'm going to add on one more. And I'm going to close it. Because I've had some folks ask before, it's like, well, how do you know how many rings to use? How long do you know to make the setting? And it's like, well, I don't really. A lot of it's experimentation. So I'm going to try closing it here. You can see how it's kind of overlapping this brown ring here. And if it's too long or too short, I usually just I just take out apart that spot again and either shorten it or lengthen it and kind of go from there. Because I definitely try to err on the side of having it be a little more snug than what you would think. It's more secure if you go the snugger route as opposed to the looser route. And so I'm just kind of threading this through like that. I know I'm not doing a very good explanation of this weave here, and it's because I've done 3 other tutorials on just this pattern. So I will link you guys down in the video description to where this is spelled out in much greater detail, and it sits just like that. I kind of like this because, I don't know, she kind of looks like she is maybe Inuit, a little fur. I mean, I know it's chainmail metal, but it definitely looks like she's got a little thing going on. I kind of like it. And then from here, we're going to mix a 2-part DevCon 5-minute epoxy. This stuff. But before we mix that up and settle it here in the back, I'm going to make another setting style, and for this we're using 18 gauge vintage bronze parawire from parawire.com, and I'm going to just I've cut off about 8 inches of it. You could use more or less, whichever you prefer. And I'm just going to wrap around twice around my pen with about 1 inch worth of tail, and then coming with them perpendicular to each other, I'm going to wrap this just around a few times. And then using my flush cutters, I'm going to throw my pen on the ground. I'm just going to snip, set that tail aside. And then using some bent nose pliers, I'm just going to smush that down so that it sits like that. And I'm going to use my fingernails to kind of pry this apart just a little bit so it's a nice little shape like that. I'm going to brace with my thumbnail here and give ourselves a bit of a bend. And now I'm going to use my round nose pliers to grab as close to the tip of the wire as I can. And you could do as close to the tip of the pliers as you want, but these are super fine tips, and I don't want my wires too close together. I want to do a really nice, loose, open spiral for this one. And you can kind of see I'm just twisting it around. Whenever it gets to this point, I can just use my fingers. And I want a very nice, open, airy spiral. Doesn't have to be perfectly even. I do want it to be pretty flat, because what we're going to be doing with this is how it looks from the side, just like that, is we're going to take, let's say, one like this one. With this face, with the stuff that's going around on the sides, I don't really want to set her in chainmail. So what I would do is I'm still going to epoxy the back, but I'm just going to secure this in the epoxy on the back. So I'm bracing the spiral there and kind of pushing the bail forward. That way when it lays, it'll lay flat like that. So that's our other option. So I'm going to go ahead and start mixing up the epoxy, and I'll meet you all right back here. So here we are. I have a sheet just of regular old printer paper folded in half. You could use a paper plate or whatever you like, just something that is disposable. And I have our DevCon 2-part 5-minute epoxy. It's really important to use the 5-minute stuff as opposed to the 30-minute curing, because the 30-minute epoxy I found is just a little too runny, whereas the 5-minute, it sets up real nice without leaking everywhere. And we're just gonna do like that, equal parts. And I'm using a long toothpick to just mix these very thoroughly together. Now from this this point right here, we have 5 minutes, and that is it. Like honestly, we actually have a little closer to like 3.5 minutes, because after that point, it's not completely set up, but it's also not nice and goopy the way it is like this. Don't eat it. Don't feed it to your goldfish. This is a chemical. Poor goldfish. Also, I don't recommend this stuff for resin casting or anything like that, because it's super bubbly. It's meant for gluing things together, not for casting things out of. So we're going to take our cabochon. Let me zoom out a little bit for you guys. And I'm getting a big old glob on my toothpick. And I'm just going to let it come on down in like this. And I'm using the tip of the toothpick to push the epoxy, not globbing it into the crevices, but I'm introducing it to the edge of the crevice. The surface tension of the epoxy will pull it in and kind of make a bit of a bond, but I don't want to put so much in there that it starts gooping through and like pushing itself through the holes, if that makes sense. Okay, so there's that. And that's that one. And usually whenever I'm doing something like this, I'll go ahead and just have a bunch of eyes ready. If it's not laying perfectly level, we can come underneath it with some other tools or some little just things that are floating around our work surface. Here I'm going to take a piece of unbaked polymer clay that I can push to the right thickness and just use that to prop up the end so that it's nice and level. Needs to be a little bit thinner. There we are. Just like that. Okay, and so now, oh, where'd the other one go? Well, I just set her down, I thought. Oh, there she is. Okay. So now for this one that I don't have an edge on, I'm going to go ahead and, please pardon weird dog noises in the background. I'm just globbing it on pretty generously, again, onto the back of the cab. Now this epoxy makes a great bond to polymer clay, but it also holds on really well to gemstones and stuff. I just recommend maybe sanding off the finer polishes to give it a little bit more of something to grab onto. Okay, so as that's sitting, I'm going to take this And I'm just going to lay it on there. And with our toothpick, I'm just going to smush that down and in. And I'm going to see if I can't layer just a little bit more on top of our little spiral to get it nice and embedded. Then also, without being too messy, I'm going to make sure that that's nice and straight up and down. There we go. And then something else that you can do to stabilize and keep everything nice and flat is here I just have a little dish of beads. I'm just going to set that face first. You could use a little tray of sand or salt or something. Just again, the goal is to keep everything as level as possible. That way you don't want your epoxy leaking out the sides. And you can feel free to go in and kind of shift and move things around. It's a lot easier to do that when you only have 2 pieces. Excuse me. But whenever I'm like setting like 10 cabochons or something, I try to have a station set up where I can make sure each one is level without having to go through and shift and fidget with it. You'll know that this stuff is getting to be done whenever I just fold the paper in half. But I'll feel it because whenever it's setting, it starts getting nice and hot. So yeah, the temperature's starting to rise. But you can see like this one, there's still some movement there in between. And I want to keep demonstrating this to you guys so you can see how it starts setting up. At this point, definitely still workable. It's starting to get a little bit more globby. And with this one, it's in no way air dry. So it is entirely based on the chemical reaction, whether you're stirring it or whether you're not stirring it. So if I can, I'm going to try to put in a little bit of editing here. But it's definitely starting to get a little bit more stringy and less goopy. So if I were using this to tack something onto something else that is on like a vertical plane, I would wait until it's at this point to adhere it, because you can see I can hold this straight up and down and it's not even sliding now. And so now here you can see it has lost its goop and sliminess, and it has become just where it starts holding shapes. So it would be at this point that it wouldn't be usable for transferring on, because it would not settle down into all the little crevices and stuff. So let's fold this in half. I want to check the temperature. Yeah, there's such a little bit left on the paper, it's not really making much of a chemical reaction. Let me see if the cabochon feels like it's heating up. Yeah, the cab's heating up nicely. So I'm just going to let this keep setting up the rest of the way. It is completely set like after 5 minutes, but I usually give it about 10 or 15 just to make absolutely sure that there's no stickiness left on the back. So I'll meet y'all right back here. So here I have woven some 18 and 26 gauge wire. I'll put a link up on the screen to show you a tutorial on how to do that weave. And I just want to get a little bit of shaping to go ahead and make a bail, because that way I can kind of build everything else around where that's going to be laying. And I'm just using my handy dandy pen. You could also use like a mandrel or a knitting needle, just anything that you have on hand. And if where it's wrapped around the pen is the head and the rest of the pendant is the body, I want to wrap that piece of 18 gauge wire around the neck to make it very nice and secure. The last thing you want is for your bail to come apart. Just doing a little bit of shaping, using my fingernails to kind of spread those two pieces apart, kind of the way you would a key ring, and then just just kind of fiddling around, getting that loose end twisted up and around. I'm going to spiral it down into a little curly Q. Try to make it nice and tight. There we go, spiraling it down. But the goal here is I don't want my cabochon to be popping out of the setting. So I'm shaping it around the, to kind of frame the edge of her face. And I want to show off that kind of little bit of coiling and stuff too. So now here you can see I've got the shaping down, and I'm starting to just kind of split those two pieces apart. And I'm like, man, how am I going to hug this side? So what I've done is, you can see here, I just wrap it around the mandrel, of course, going off camera, sorry guys. And then doing a couple of like twist tie twists, and it makes these little loops that you can just hug and make like a little prongs out of around the edge of the stone. Well, in this case, polymer clay face, but, and then I'm just wrapping the loose wires, again, I'm so sorry for going off camera, around, again, the neck of the piece. And then you can just push those little prongs down. And now it's becoming a case of tucking these stray wires kind of around and through to, accent and accentuate and kind of fancy it up a little bit. This one I have hugging across the front and now across the back as well. This is going to be the stabilizing wire that will help keep the cab secured in. Just binding that off. Now also, I started having problems with being a little rougher on this piece. And so some of my gears started popping off. We'll talk more about how to fix that later. And I'm just using my round nose pliers to do kind of little warped, shapy parts just to get that wire, give it a little bit more character, and get it to cinch down and hold a little bit more. You can see I did the same thing to that one on the back. And you can take the edges of these prongs and do this same thing as well. And it really helps to kind of force it around in a way that will actually hold the stone. Curly cueing this around just a bit. Because really, once you have the stone set, it all becomes just a matter of personalization, making it into something that you're happy with. You know, it's like, make it look however you want. Kind of finding spaces between the frame wire and the stone that I can fill through, and just give it more depth, more layers of intricacy happening, but also to act to stabilize. Just kind of twisting and curling around. I don't want to cover up too much of the rivet work that I did along the side of her face, but what happens happens. Grabbing the wire as close to the tip of the pliers and as close to the tip of the wire as I can. I'm just kind of cinching it down into a little spiral, using my handy dandy bent nose pliers to get in there and kind of position everything, because I want it faced nicely. And now stabilizing another wire, but also furthering the stability of the stone. You can see how I just tucked that one around and through, so now it's holding on to the other wire, and then just finishing it into a spiral. I like spirals. Just kind of smushing everything together, holding and thinking. And now here, I actually took a stretched out spring from, it was much more compact and tight from inside a watch. And so I just threaded it onto the 18 gauge frame wire, and now I'm stabilizing it, but it added another layer of depth and steampunk to this kind of found object, watch gear, glow in the dark face. And don't be afraid to kind of manhandle the, strong hand the wire a little bit and kind of jam it around and get it to sit where you want it to. The para wire is really great about keeping the form that you sculpt it into. Giving her a nice little curly cue on her chin, which again will go and stabilize that end of the cabochon as well. And I'm just threading this up through the top. I think I went across the back on it. And now, whoop, spiraling around into little curly cues some more. And then I'm going to stabilize this again around the neck of the veil. I wrapped it twice, and then I'm just curling that in, So it's a nice little curlicue again. And from here you can kind of smush and shape and test and see. Now, to stabilize those gears, I'm using a layer of Mod Podge Dimensional Magic. I have the gears all set where I want them to be. And I'm just going through and doing a it's halfway between light and generous. Like, you don't want to do too much, but you don't want to do too little either. And you really don't want it to start sliding around. Okay guys, so our epoxy has completely dried. So you can see here on the back of this one, that spiral is nice and secure. I don't know if you can actually hear how hard that epoxy cures to, but I love that stuff. And if you have any problems or inhibitions about using these gears, what I did on this one was I went through with just some Mod Podge Dimensional Magic, and I just did a coating. You can see it adds some really nice shine to it as well. But I just go through and kind of top over all of it. It's not completely dry yet. I'm going to let it cure overnight. But I'm pretty pleased with how the wrap job came out on this one. The back's kind of, that happens. But I really like the front. And then this one here, what we would do is you can take opened rings and hook it through like here and here to make it into a necklace. Or you could have it two hooked through up on the top center to have it hang as a pendant. You could go through with another layer of epoxy and add a brooch, like a pin on the back. That way you can make it into a pin that you can wear or like put onto a hat band, or, I mean, the possibilities with these are endless. But I just wanted to show you guys some different possibilities. Hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me for this video. I do hope that this tutorial was helpful to you guys. I'm really pleased with how they came out. These pieces will be up for sale on my Etsy, as well as some of the unset cabochons. That way you can make them into whatever you want for yourself. Also, I'm gonna see if I can't, hopefully, note to future Vaughn, take a video of them glowing in the dark and then post it in the video like you planned it all along. So we'll see how well that works out. But yeah, this one's easily my favorite. The 7 of 9 like steampunk Borg face makes me happy deep down in my nerdy heart. But if you guys have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave them down below. If you have any requests for future videos, again, leave them down in the comments. If you follow along with any of my tutorials or just want to share what you've made, please find me on Facebook or Instagram. You can tag me or share pictures to my wall of what you've made, and that way I get to see what y'all come up with, because y'all are the greatest inspiration. You really are. And then last but not least, if you guys enjoy my free tutorials and would like to support the creation of more of them, please check me out on Patreon. For starting at just $1 a month, you can participate in all of our Fairy House giveaways, my monthly craft crates, exclusive behind the scenes content, and all sorts of different stuff, that we're doing here at Back to Earth Creations. So thank you guys so much, and happy crafting. Mwah! Bye!